So, if anybody's wondering what we're doing here, well, the title says it all. We are doing preview number 2 of DDO's Lamannia test server thing. So I'm trying out something new here, by the way, so if something goes weird, if the display goes a little off, just know that you don't have to pay for this stream, so it's all good. But we're just going to check out these notes really quickly. We're going to go through them, and then I'm going to go and test out how they apply in the game. To a small extent, not necessarily as much as I did last time, but we're just going to go and, punch some dummies and stuff. I've already got my gear, I've got my character set up, so it's just a matter of getting into the game. So, for the most part, what we're going to do is we're going to look at these blue notes, everything in blue, everything that has changed so far since the first preview. So, let's get right into it. We're going to ignore the archetypes for now because I'm getting in the game to test that, and we're also going to keep the Temple of Elemental Evil stuff until a little later too, because the Temple of Elemental Evil stuff, all the loot has been revamped and updated. So we're just going to go through that, and I'll just give my first impressions on what I think of like the heroic and the epic legendary loot that they've got, because they've updated it to level 31. So we'll get into that when we get into it. So, I suppose the first thing we want to do is go right down here and just check out the two smaller notes to start with. So the first thing that we've got here is Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares now grants hand wraps, the morale bonus to crit threat range, that it would normally grant a lot of other items. So that is a small bonus to hand wrap damage, but I don't necessarily think it's going to make or break hand wraps either. And it's another feat that people have to take. I don't know how I feel about that one. I think it's good that it has an option. But at the same time, I feel like this is not going to be a big impact, and the user interface changes don't really matter all that much. It's just they weren't showing up the math correctly. So there's not much to really talk about in terms of like a general overwhelming gameplay change. Really what we're going to get into is the archetypes. So here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to go into, let's go into this one. I'm going to go into these archetypes individually, and we're just going to play the character out with the changes we see here. So, naturally, we want to start with Sacred Fist, because we're always starting with Sacred Fist. So what's changed here? Well, first, Sacred Fist gets new spells. They're becoming more monk-like by the day. And that, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the monk changes, and turning paladin into monk, because it doesn't have its own identity at that point. So already I'm a little iffy on the whole translate monk, or translate paladin into monk thing. But we'll test them out and we'll see what happens. Basically everything they're doing now is costing key as well. So it's just more monk translations. Now, the interesting things here is actually the changes to how the deity feats function right now. The changes basically amount to Path of Light is now automatically granted, and you don't have a choice on your deity feat. Which, I mean, I'm not as big a fan of, because it limits everything that you're supposed to do. So that one is not a good change in my opinion. The Sacred Fist cores no longer cost 2 AP. I didn't even notice that while I was playing through, to be fair. So that one might be a little different. But, you know, it's not a big deal. 2 AP versus 1 AP, it's just kind of a glitch. And the Whirlwind attacks, use the Whirlwind attack animation. Whatever. It really doesn't matter to me. So, let's go in and test it out just right now. We'll go in and test it out, and we'll see what it looks like at the moment, and how it plays out. And we're just doing, like, basic damage tests. I'm not going to go really in-depth with this, because, I mean, there's not really much point. Basically, nothing has changed. So, here we are. We are in Lamannia, and I am on Whirling Fingers, which I thought was a pretty decent name for this. Now, the only thing I haven't done with this guy is I haven't set his new key spells. Key Explosion sounds awesome. Let's throw Zeal and Holy Sword, because obviously. And that's really all we need. I mean, let's just drop that there. We'll drop that there. And we'll drop that there. Incinerating Wave. That's probably my favorite monk ability. So I think that's going to be really fun. And I don't know. This one here. And since we're just doing damage here, we're not going to be super concerned about other sort of, any other abilities or whatever. So let's go ahead, drop that, and Keybolt. G is fine for that. And Divine Favor. Now, the only thing that I actually need is a component for my second level pally spells. Yep, that's all I need. Okay, good. So what do we need? We need eagle feathers. Sure, let's just get 10 of them. It doesn't matter. All right, and for anybody who's joining, just now or recently, this is basically Lamannia Test Server Preview 2. We're previewing the second time the differences in how stuff plays now versus how it played before with the 3 archetypes that were available in Preview 1. If you want to see that video, I've still got it on my Twitch page, and I've also uploaded it onto my Twitter, which I can go ahead and throw a link to in the chat right here. So if you want to go and see the YouTube, I said Twitter. If you want to go see the YouTube channel where that is, it'll be called DDO Update 56 Lamannia Preview, yada yada. You can find it pretty quickly. Point being, you'll be able to find that, and it'll just be like a more edited version of the same thing that's on Twitch. But all that to say, we might as well go ahead and try it out. So we're going to throw everything on, everything that we got. Our auras are already on. And we can just go ahead. So this is what we're expecting, and this is, by the way, level 20. Level 20 version. So we're not going to be doing, like, the maximum amount of damage here. Because I don't want destinies getting in the way of this test. As far as it is right now, it's actually a little slow to generate ki, to be fair. But, wow, as soon as I used that Sacred Flame, I started critting. What's happening here, actually? +3 Sacred Fist dice, and critical hits deal extra bane. Wow, Sacred Flame Empowerment's not bad. Let's go ahead and throw that on. Oh, we just life drank him, so that's fine. Let's just go over here and start punching this guy. So that's actually not bad at all. So let's go ahead and generate a few more ki, because I want to see this. Boom! That was not super impressive. that was not super impressive at all. Deal 1d6 per Sacred Fist dice in fire and light damage to enemies in your vicinity. That one might not be working as well as it should, honestly. That might not be working as well as it should. Let's try that. Oh wait, no, where's my... Was that the wave? That was Ki Explosion. Where is my wave? I didn't even put it on my bars. See, this is the quality that you guys watch here. Alright, so let's go ahead. We'll try out the wave. We can't perform that in a pub. We might have to try that somewhere else. That's fine. That's pretty easy. But our cleaves also cost ki now, by the way. So you'll notice when I use the cleaves, the ki that we spend is basically way more than we can possibly replenish. So we're going to have to be very careful to not use these. Like, this one costs 18 ki. This one costs 12. Is it 12? Yes. So they used to cost nothing in the previous preview, and that actually makes it very difficult to generate the amount of resources we need to keep up our abilities. So, honestly, a little more difficult to play this than before. The DPS is fine, the Life Drinker is really what's doing all the kills, so it's not like we've got anything different than we had before. But now I want to test out the Epic Staff of Nat Gan, and see the changes here. And it's clear the Epic Staff is already generally doing better. It has better crits, it has better base damage. Let's go ahead and drop this on, Sacred Flame, to drop even more damage. So the hand wraps are just underperforming from scratch. It's actually very disappointing, really. Alright, let's melee boost this. Doesn't really go up that... Like, I don't like melee boost, honestly. I feel like it doesn't do its work, really. I feel like it never does the work that you think you're putting in. Yeah, no, the difference is just completely uncanny. Like, the only reason we're killing stuff is because of that Life Drinker. But, generally speaking, like hand wraps, the last time I played this with the hand wrap paladin, it was pretty bad. It was pretty low damage. It hasn't changed a huge amount. That's the problem. And also when we come over here, we have the option to hit things with our cleaves, but we could just swap to this, and then we would hit everything with our strike-through cleaves and do significantly more damage. And by the way, this is the Staff of Nat Gan. This is a level 20 Epic Crocodile Moss, so they're approximately the same level, but there's no comparison between the two playstyles. Hand wraps still fall short, even without like any bonuses or any buffs or anything like that. Hand wraps pretty much universally fall shy. And that actually limits what you can do with this paladin. That's the thing. So, as far as like a base test of what we've done so far, I'm even less impressed with the paladin than I was before, partly because now it's a resource-starved, low-damage tree, and it can't take advantage of any other favored weapons. And we have specialized pretty decently here, so, like, it should be fine. It should be fine in terms of damage output. Now, the only other thing I wanted to test here that I didn't get to in that previous video are the Radiant Servant abilities, because I did do a lot of testing on Sacred Defender, so I think we can put Sacred Fist aside. I think we're good there. I think it's pretty much, we've figured it out. We know what's going on. So, what I want to test out, and I did not set up for healing here, so let's go ahead and just drop that in there just for the sake of it, because I want to test out the healing capabilities. I guess I already had that there. So with our Cure Moderate, with no SLAs on it, no metamagics rather, it's 441 with a crit, and it seems like about 200 or so with a non-crit. The healing is not bad for a paladin with no investment, honestly. But let's go ahead and check out our Cure Serious. And 211, so actually this is not much better than just Cure Moderate SLA. Not much better at all, really. I wonder if maybe the Cure Mod SLA is working off of the extra stuff in this tree, like the positive crit damage and stuff like that. But the Cure Serious is not. I don't know if they've coded it differently, but Cure Serious does not seem to be doing much better than just standard Cure Moderate. Like, the crit damage is much better, but the healing base is basically the same. So I'm thinking that maybe that's something they might want to take a look at. My character here doesn't have huge investment in Charisma, but I've got a decent score for level 20. So it should be doing a little more work than that. So that's a little disappointing. I mean, it's fine, it's just not great. But, you know, most of the other abilities in this tree work. They tend to proc this right here, our Bliss, so that's working as intended, but, you know, like, the tree kind of works, it's just, I feel like it's not working with the Paladin spells as well, which is a little weird. It's a little weird. But that's all well and good, that's just stuff that might... Oh, that one was a decent heal, actually. Stuff that might work, might not work. The only other thing that I've got to mention in this tree is that they still kept Divine Health, despite the fact that we're Paladin. So, Divine Health is unnecessary, because Paladins are completely immune to diseases already. So that part doesn't really matter as much. So honestly, I mean, like, I think the problem still exists the same way as it did before. It's still just a very low damage tree. It's just not very good at what it's supposed to do, which is punch things, because fists are not a great, you know, weapon in battle. So, it's still kind of got the same problems. There's not much to talk about after this one. So I guess what we can do is we'll just move right on over. We'll move right on over to our Dark Apostate and just kind of talk about that one for a bit and the changes that have gone on there. You know, once again, Sacred Paladin didn't change all that much, so it's not really a big deal. Alright, so we are over on Dark Apostate. Now, we don't really have any changes until Tier 2. Tier 2 is when things start getting a little different, but not really better. Mighty Turning, it doesn't really matter. I guess it's fine, because that's kind of just a thing that clerics have. But the Cursed Wounds, or cursed words, not cursed wounds. Cursed words used to be that AoE sort of, you'll drop a curse on everything with a 30-second cooldown thing. Nowadays, it costs 0 spell points, but it's a single target SLA bestow curse. It's not great, honestly. It's not great. And that's a real problem, I think. But, you know, maybe we'll test it out in game. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe bestow curse does actually target multiple things, but I remember it not doing so. So I'm not entirely sure on that one. Favored weapons are now an implement in your hands. Well, that's fine. That's just more spell power. And our bug fixes. Inflict mass spells weren't healing the caster still, so that's been kind of fixed. I knew that wasn't exactly fixed in the first patch, but it was mentioned that was a thing that they were going for, so I just kind of prepared ahead of time. But it wasn't properly fixed in the first patch. Can take your second Wisdom Dark Apostate, that's fine. Your Prayer for Mercy is no longer caster centered on non-caster spells. I don't even remember that one, to be fair. Dark Apostate form and weapon would no longer have 30-second cooldowns. That's good. I kind of like that, because that basically it was tough to sort of get back into that shadow form after you got kicked out. Now it's like a 10-second cooldown thing. Protection from alignment works. That's nice. I like it when things work. And shadow form no longer drops on death and relog. I didn't tend to have that problem, but it apparently was a thing. So, there aren't too many changes with the Dark Apostate. The only major change seems to have been the SLA bestow curse for cursed words. So why don't we go ahead and we will just go into that one and just kind of test it out, because actually there were a couple of things that I did want to mention about that have maybe not changed, but have sort of changed functionality or bugged out when these changes took effect. So that's one of those things that I want to check out really quickly. And once again, this is just kind of like an update. This isn't really like, you know, a whole playthrough thing. I didn't really schedule a whole playthrough thing for this. It's just kind of an update of what's going on with the preview, really. So let's go ahead and head back into DDO. Now we've got one hand, then the other hand, as my Dark Apostate, and I have built him to be a little more structured around both melee and spellcasting, which is weird because the Dark Apostate is also being more focused towards spellcasting than melee at this point. So, what have we got? Well, basically what I wanted to do is I still wanted to keep in the Dark Apostate here. I got pretty much all the goodies that I had last time, ignoring things like in-cap range and when you're knocked unconscious in any undead form. I could not get that word out. Then it would allow you to basically go invisible and heal up after a certain amount of time. You know, I got rid of stuff like that because we're not testing that. We're just going for straight up damage. Now, I did ignore a lot of the Divine Disciple stuff because it was like, I thought it was really wiggy or you know, twisted earlier in the first preview, but I'm seeing something that they're actually doing here. What they're doing is they're allowing you to choose Divine Emissary of Light and of Darkness. So, you can go into this, and then we'll just put some points in, it doesn't really matter, like there. And then you'll notice you can take the light side here and the dark side here and just keep going along. Now, if you keep putting points in and don't choose to go on one of these two sides, you could take that entire emissary all the way across, either right to left from the darkness side or left to right from the light side, which I think is a really cool addition. It definitely needs to be explained more clearly when you're doing these when these patch notes come out, because that was a little much to kind of do when that's never happened before. But it's really cool to see that that's like its own sort of play style, so you can kind of go up the list a little bit and do that. And then it just kind of makes everything available to you. Now, it can be really powerful too, because you'll get access to all 6 cores by level 6, by 10 points in the tree, 12 points technically, by spending the points in the cores. So you will get easy access to quite a few SLAs or just standard spells that you wouldn't get access to, like Sunbolt, and also getting Enervation. So, you know, a little more powerful, but not too much more powerful. Now, something I did want to mention is that the War Priest got gutted. It got absolutely gutted in this one. Like, Resilience of Battle is useless. Your Sanctuary is useless without the, to be fair, they were kind of useless before, but like they lose the light spell power, they lose the fire spell power, pretty much all the way along the tree. And that's the weird thing, like you get to keep them here. I don't know if that's intentional. I definitely don't think it's a good idea. War Priest cannot afford to be constantly nerfed still. Like, it needs a buff. It needs to be amped up a little bit. And gutting it like this, I mean, it ruins it for casters, but you could give them something melee-oriented if you're going to take away the caster element. War Priest is the, probably the worst tree, yeah? I think it is. I have a video back on YouTube where RoboGogo and I, a friend of mine, and I tend to go through all these trees, and we figured out pretty much which ones were S tier, pretty much which ones were, garbage tier, and War Priest is firmly garbage tier. So, if you want, you could go and check that out as well. Once again, you could check that link that I've thrown in the chat there, and just kind of check out some of that stuff too, because we've gone over a bunch of these things as well. War Priest cannot afford to be gutted. That's the disappointing part of this. And I didn't notice this before. I didn't notice the changes before. So they may be more recent, but I'm not sure. Point being, if that's the plan going forward, please don't do that. So, anyway, we have more of a caster orientation with this. Divine Disciple and Dark Apostate kind of work in tandem. War Priest is not a good secondary tree. I've just kind of taken all of the damage options out of there. And I intentionally held on to Divine Disciple just to show that off. So I guess we can go in here. We can get this one. Now, apparently there's a bit of an issue with light spell power that you don't get as much, not light, alignment spell power, that you won't get as much if you take the dark side versus the light side. The dark side, I think, in Divine Disciple definitely needs more of a buff than it's got, because the light side was pretty much the only version of Divine Disciple that was worth it. So, if that's the case, that probably needs to be worked on, but, I'm not entirely sure. Now, I do like that you have multi-selectors for Disciple of Dusk and Disciple of Dawn, and what do we got here? That one allows you to take the other one, yes. So that's kind of interesting for the amplification end. I kind of like that. And it seems like the crit is pretty standard, the plus 2% crit all the way up. So this is a pretty standard caster tree, but the SLAs tend to be like, up here, and that's about it. And you've got some actual spells down here, especially Sunbolt, which I'm not sure Cleric gets access to. Maybe it does, maybe I'm wrong about that. But we do have these inflict spells, so I think I want to go ahead and test them out. We want to test out, let's test out that. And, Unholy Blight. I would never use that spell, now that I think about it. Like, I would never, ever use that spell. So, yeah, let's try it out. Whatever. Yeah, let's go for it. And that one, yeah, we're fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly set this up, just because I hadn't set that up yet, because I wanted to test that stuff out. So, we're just going to quickly set up the new stuff that we've got here. New stuff we've got here. Unholy Blight. And I know that it wasn't prayer, was it? It was... Was it prayer? Oh, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Point being, we can go over here. We'll just go and test on this little kobold over here. And I've decided to go ahead. I can throw one curse, so that's what that is. I can go over here, and since I have more of a melee orientation while I'm waiting for spells to fill out, I actually have things I can do. So it's a little better. I think that the melee is still kind of the way that this wants to be done. And also the idea of the, two-handed fighting, cleaving through everything, is also really nice. I'll leave him to do that stuff. I'm going to go over here. We're going to test it on this guy, because there are a couple of things that haven't quite... They're not quite working as intended with this. And that's the weirdest thing. First of all, I think this right here, Dark Consumption, I think that still works. It obviously doesn't work on these guys, but it's the harm spell is what I really wanted to mention. The harm spell is doing nothing. The harm spell is doing nothing at all. I mean, we could do tons of damage with Inflict Critical. It's saving, and it's still taking 1200, which is more than our melee damage. The Curse is single target. That's not a good option, because the AoE was actually pretty decent with that before. but it is a 0-cost curse with 6-second cooldown, so it's not as bad as it looks, and it'll stick on them, so you can have multiple curse, just keep going back and forth, drop that on them, come over here, do damage, because you can get both of them. Now, you can drop that, and they will do increased damage. But, I mean, I kind of like the AoE option. I think that was my favorite ability in the tree, and I praised it to high heaven on the other video I'd done. Yep, our Cure Light Wounds spell, or Inflict Light Wounds, does work. But, does it work on us? Did they add that in here? Let's go ahead and we'll just target. There we go. So it does work on us. Harm also... Oh, that's interesting. Harm is restoring our ability score, but it's not actually healing, and it's not doing damage. That's very interesting. So that's definitely got to be fixed. Yeah, the Shadow Bolt, or Necrotic Bolt, is doing very good damage. I'm not entirely sure if Blight can even work on those guys, so I might just be wasting my time. So let's throw it on here. And did it even blight him? No. It's probably got a saving throw, and I definitely don't have DCs for that, right? No, it should be doing damage. That's disappointing. So, no DPS for that. So yeah, that's another sort of aspect. Like, some of the spells just aren't working at all, and that's a weird thing. And I think that's one of those things that they'll have to take a look at on this one, because... like, it should be working as intended. It shouldn't be that this light spell here does, you know, all the damage, especially when you go into melee and there's not really a great support for it with the Dark Apostate, despite this ability here, Apostate's Curse, implying that there will be. Like, I'm using Sword of Shadows with this guy. He actually does have, over here, the Sword of Shadows, the Epic Sword of Shadow, which is, like, the best weapon in the game for level 20. So like, it should be doing more damage than just your standard spell cast. That one doesn't do anything. So I can do 1300 with a spell cast, and not a huge amount just punching. So I don't think that that's really great. Once again, like, I could throw on the aura. It's not balanced around that same metric there. I think that it's probably way more caster focused, way more caster centric. It's much more beneficial for casters to be a Dark Apostate caster than it is to be a Dark Apostate melee splash. But the option is kind of still there to bleed Apostate and go into a better melee tree. I think it's just that Dark Apostate melee suffers from the same problem as Sacred Fist melee. It doesn't have a great supporting tree to help it out. War Priest is terrible as a tree. Like, this is the only reason to take War Priest at all, is for Divine Might. You never take it for anything else. Really, it's just a waste of points to throw all that stuff in there. So, Dark Apostate doesn't have anything to support it for melee, which means that it has 2 caster trees and 1 melee tree, which means it's now become more of a caster-centric tree. Honestly, I think that War Priest, before Dark Apostate, before Divine Disciple, like, fix the problematic stuff that Dark Apostate has, but don't buff Divine Disciple or Dark Apostate anymore. They don't need it. What we need is this tree needs some assistance right here. It needs some help. It's not a good tree. So we need to fix up War Priest itself, and then give, like, the 2 options, so to speak. The you know, here's your physical damage, and here's your caster damage. And I think that's one of the things that is done really well with Ranger, with their Deepwood Stalker being able to be used as a range tree or as a melee tree. It's a great option. I think it's also a good option. It's done well with, say, Vanguard. Even though Vanguard is, once again, not really a great tree, it can synergize pretty well with tank, and it can synergize very well with damage. So you can actually choose to place it in there. So it's like a filler tree that helps out either one. War Priest is not really helping either one. Nerfing the spell power means that Divine Disciple and Dark Apostate are the trees, and since it has no damage to begin with, it never did have any damage, it can't help Dark Apostate. It supports nothing. It's a waste of space right now. And that's a real problem with a tree, as far as I'm concerned. So War Priest needs a lot of help. You know, the trees that you notice that are really good and that function really well are ones that you can use multiple trees to sort of build up your particular character. So, you know, if you wanted to be a wolf druid, you can use the tank tree to buff up your defense. The tank tree can also be used in conjunction with the caster druid to buff up its defense, but also its HP. So, like, they work together somewhat. There's little bits, little low-hanging fruit in each of those trees that you could take no matter which build you're on. I think that the caster on that one is bad just because they don't support it very well, but that's another issue. Like, War Priest needs some love, basically, is all I'm saying on that one. And I think that the melee is weak. I think that the caster is strong, but some things have just become a little broken ever since the, ever since the patch came out last time. Things just stopped working very well. So maybe that's a thing. Maybe all of these spells, especially the SLAs, and I'm not going to go through all the SLAs because, you know, I don't think that it's necessary. We've already kind of figured out Unholy Blight just doesn't seem to want to work. But, you know, maybe that's the best place to focus, is make sure that Unholy Blight works, make sure that all the other SLAs work, make sure that Harm works again, because that's kind of the bread and butter spell. And now that I think about it, it might be Benediction. So let's just go ahead and spend that money. Let's just go ahead and spend that. And we're just going to try it out. Yep, it's Benediction. Benediction is making it do nothing. That's what it is. Oh dear. So, that's where you gotta focus your attention, I guess. Benediction. It's 2 times spell power. I wonder if it's like a 0 times spell power. I wonder how they coded that one. Point being, it is definitely not working. Benediction needs to be fixed, because that's the only one that was really affecting Harm, and Harm works without it. So, I mean, I think that overall, the Dark Apostate got worse. I think that it got a little bit worse. So, I don't know, I'm not fond of where it's at. I think that I was really hoping for, like, that sort of shadow physical damager, and what I got was a caster, which we've got, you know, casters are a dime a dozen in the game right now. Anyway, I've prattled on for long enough on that one. We'll log out of this guy, and we'll head over to the final archetype in our preview. So let's go over there. So, Storm Singer. If you watched my previous update preview thing, you'll know that Storm Singer did not function at all. Like, everything was busted. Everything fell apart. Horn of Thunder didn't even want to let other cores, other tier 5s rather, happen, so that was kind of funny. I have tested that out since. They have fixed Horn of Thunder. It does function at 3 ranks, and it locks out other trees tier 5s, but not its own. So that one is fixed. So, what do we have here? Well, our first change is obviously that they get magical training, which is fine. That's kind of a thing I always, every time I play Bard, I always just kind of assume they have magical training, but I never actually, like, it always seems to not be there. And then I have to go into Spell Singer and throw it on. And that's not a thing you have to do if you have Storm Singer now. So, okay, basically. It's one of those things I expected would always be on. Bards are kind of a jack of all trades. They probably should have had basic magical training. So I just never really thought about it before, and now I'm glad that they just kind of threw that in there. I wish that they just give that to bards in general, and then they wouldn't have to bother with this. But, you know, it's in there now. Storm Singers don't gain a lot of this extra bonuses from, I believe it's War Chanter that gives all the improved inspires and everything like that. Which, once again, like, it's a stick. You don't need to give a stick to make a build work. You don't need to say, well, now that you've chosen this type of archetype, you know, Storm Singer and Spell Singer, you're a caster and that's all you can do. There's no point to having the 3rd tree at that point. You might as well get rid of War Chanter and say these are the 2 trees you can have, because War Chanter's useless compared to those 2 trees. So, it seems to me like it's just working against itself, and I'm not fond of that. Let's see here. Bug fixes. Yeah, there's the tier 5. Reverberate does initial damage on tick. That's kind of good. I'm probably still never going to use a dot, but, you know. SLAs and Stormbringer no longer share cooldowns. That is not true, because I've already seen that, and we'll get to that in a moment. And Reverberate, now properly a sonic spell instead of a cold spell. Well, that's nice. I kind of like that it is, but, you know. But it still doesn't work quite correctly, but let's go in. Let's go in and we'll just kind of test it out. and see which parts of this aren't working as intended and which parts are at this point. So we'll hop in. I've got Zappy Wind here. I decided to change all the names, as you can tell, so that you can, get some new characters in here. We gotta have some funny names. I'm not very good at coming up with names on the spot, so here we are. But we'll go over here because this guy's kind of an AoE guy. So we'll just drop that. Obviously, Horn of Thunder works, and it drops some lightning on things. And the rest of them are pretty much just single target kind of piddly spells, except here. We'll get to Shout, and it puts Snowball Swarm on a cooldown. And the worst part about this is Snowball Swarm does nothing. It still does nothing. And that's the thing about this one. It didn't do anything the first time, and it's not doing anything now. So that's a spell that needs to be reworked and needs to be looked at as soon as possible, because it's going to launch and going to be useless. So what we want to do here is I'm just going to go ahead and reset all the Spell Singer, and we're just going to test out the other SLAs. There's not a huge amount to say to this Bard. I'm actually more disappointed than not in it, and I'll get into my reasons for that in just a moment. I'll just do that, sure. And this one. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to just add those enhancements that we've got. Cure Wounds Mass, and Suggestion. Now, I didn't realize that they had Cure Wounds and Cure Wounds Mass. I thought that there were different spells before. But it looks like those ones aren't putting anything on a cooldown, so it's just the Snowball Swarm Shout. Snowball Swarm is not working, but they got Horn of Thunder, and Horn of Thunder is working and is massive, and it does a lot of damage, and it's meaty and beefy, and I like it. Now, what do I not like about this tree? Sadly, like, I don't want to rampage and rant and rave on Stormsinger because I really want this kind of build to work, but there are so many things that I don't like about it. And it's not the bugs and the stuff like that. Like, that's just stuff that would happen in test server. Like, empty space. What's filling in? What are you doing to replace this right here? This spell point regeneration. There's nothing there to replace it. This is more damage oriented without the spell regen. Now, I have played Spell Singers in the past. They are good damage. They are great CC. They are great healers. They are amazing at pretty much everything you want them to be amazing at. And Spellsong Vigor, one of the best, if not the best, utility spell for a caster group in the entire game. Like, you cannot replace that with blank space. That is top of the line, absolutely, upper echelon Spellsinger right there. That's what makes it S tier, is the fact that you can regenerate spell points. Nobody in their right mind, in any capacity, ever is going to take Stormsinger tier 5s over that. If they know the value of spell points, and as a bard, well, you better know the value of spell points. You've got lower spell points than most other casters. You need a regen, and that is a perfect, powerful, amazing. I would do everything with that spell, that ability. Like, that is good. That is great. I love it. It's gravy. I can't say too much good about it. And what do they have here? Well, they have Stormsinger's Inspiration. You can always just take that, cast it on your friends, because the previous incarnation of this, I tried to test out my own melee attacks. That does not work. You actually need allies. The allies are the ones who can do the lightning strike if they melee or, ranged attack, if they physically attack something. Whereas you can make it happen if you, cast a spell, and I think that's a 20% chance? Yes, right there. Lightning strike. That is a 20% chance for you to do it, and their small chance, I'm assuming it's still between 1 and 5%, somewhere in that range, probably closer to the 1%. It would make sense, and it would probably be more balanced, but if you're in a party of 5 people, it's going to be happening all the time, so that is actually still good. I would still go 4 tier in this, 5 tier in this, with core there. You wouldn't even bother with any of this other stuff, and you just take probably Enhanced Bolt there, just so that you've got extra caster levels. Like, honestly, Stormsinger will never beat Spellsinger in this current incarnation, but the worst part is it doesn't synergize at all with War Chanter. War Chanter is now the outlier melee. It doesn't have any help, so it's kind of like War Priest at this point, which means that it basically is a useless tree. Like, you could literally just go ahead and just unset it and find a universal tree like Fate Arc Illusionist to help you with your DC, because you're never going to use War Chanter ever. You will never, ever, ever use this tree when you have access to Stormsinger, Spellsinger, and Fate Arc. And even if you drop Fate Arc, Stormsinger, Spellsinger, you could go 40x amount of points in here because there's a lot of goodies in there, and you could go 30x amount of points in here because you could literally just fill out your rotation with these two trees, or Chanter stops being useful. Like, that's the problem, is you can't completely obsolete a playstyle by creating an archetype. It's supposed to expand the game, and yet Spellsinger, Stormsinger is one playstyle, and the only ideal playstyle, and there's nothing else. Bard doesn't have any other options there because there are no benefits between Spellsinger or Stormsinger for a melee guy to attack. If you chose melee, I don't think you get the access to Stormsinger's inspiration, which means that, like, what are you choosing this for? The Spellsinger's heal? That's what you chose it for before. It's one of those things. You know, it does not work, and it will not work in this current incarnation. Stormsinger is always inferior to Spellsinger, and it's like a basic sort of caster tree. Like, the reason Spellsinger is so interesting is because it's not just loaded with SLAs and that's it. It's not just loaded with critical chance. Like, you have some weird stuff in here, like choosing magical or musical studies. Now, I do want to prove that you can't actually take magical studies tier 3 with the Stormsinger archetype because you've already got magical. So you could take musical and increase your bard songs. It's not really that big a deal, honestly. But, like, here's what I'm talking about. Like, you have all these different inspiration melodies that augment what you do. You have the capacity to choose to help other people or help yourself, you know, but helping other people is always superior, so you might as well take the inspiration. But, like, all this stuff kind of works in tandem with the bard, and then you can come over here for Inspire Courage. You can come over here to get, like, all the extra sort of, you know, aria buffs that are just like AoE passives, if you're not Stormsinger, we're presuming. And it just kind of flows together. Spellsinger can be a War Chanter. War Chanter can be a Swashbuckler. Swashbuckler really can't be a Spellsinger, but then again, Tempest can't be an Arcane Archer, so it's not like they have to be perfectly synergistic, but there has to be like a fluid tree, you know, a Specialist 1 tree and a Specialist 2 tree, and Bard has that already. With Stormsinger, they lose that, and they don't gain anything back except for just numbers. Like, that's the worst thing I think that I could say about this tree, is that it's just, it doesn't add anything. It doesn't give me a reason to want to play the tree, and that's problematic. I would always choose Spellsinger. I think that's a lot of my rant already gone, though. Like, I mean, the fast movement's already in Swashbuckler, so, like, there's not really much reason to go here other than just extra critical and extra, you know, evocation damage. And then you go back to Spellsinger and get all the goodies and all the top tiers in it because it's kind of cool and it's awesome and it plays well, and you get Will of the Banshee and heal, which is amazing. Like, there's so much good over here. And this capstone, or Charisma, Evocation, Lightning Strike deals extra damage. So it's basically just numbers. So if I was going to rate Stormsinger, since it's mostly fixed now, I'm going to say probably, like, my interest level is at like a D. A solid, straight across, unsatisfactory D. A C plus for functionality, but I can never see myself using Stormsinger over Spellsinger. Like, even if I could get a little bit extra damage, I lose out on this. I lose out on the inspiration melody. And I can still get a ton of the goodies from there. You know, extra bard songs, Hold Monster Mass. Hold Monster Mass is always going to be better than just, like, a glacial, or, what is this, Iceberg. Always going to be better than Iceberg. And it's, honestly, I would take a Hold Monster before I would take this Master of Storms. Even if I was a sort of, like, evocation caster, I would still take Hold Monster because it's so good. I just don't see it. I just don't see how that beats this. Like, 2 extra DCs to enchantment spells, that's really nice. And you're more of an enchanter, or hopefully you're more of an enchanter as a bard, because an evocation bard, you might as well be an evocation sorcerer and be better. That's all I've got to say on it. Otherwise, like, I'm not really satisfied. I'm not really satisfied. So I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on those. Wait, before I log out, I almost forgot. We have one last thing. So now that we're past the archetypes, all of them have kind of gotten, like, Paladin stayed roughly the same in my eyes, but the others kind of fell apart. But we got to get to the loot. We got to get to update 56's loot, and I'm just going to give really quick sort of examples of what I think of these, because I'm not sure if you guys are super interested in somebody just prattling on about the loot. I'm probably not, so let's just go through it quickly. So, Radiance, Nullification, Necromancy, and Insightful Spell Pen, that's fine. It's basically, you know, very useful for the Dark Apostate. That's about it. See here, Crystalline, Mage Gloves, Quality Charisma, Magical Sheltering, Life Sealed, and Quality Spell Resist. I kind of like them, honestly, because I don't think gloves are super competitive at that level. So it's a good pally item. And it's a good Life Sealed item for anybody, honestly. Let's see here. Flame Priest Focus, Accuracy, Potency, Insightful Seeker, Insightful Combat. Actually, that kind of feels more of an Eldritch Knight thing, which I kind of like, because they need a little love too. I think Eldritch Knight is kind of like, it's good, but it's kind of falling behind Pale Master. And if you're a Sork, you're just going to be a nuke, so it doesn't matter. Intricate Mage Gloves, so that's exactly the same carbon copy of Crystalline. Wondrous is carbon copy for Wisdom. That I'm not fond of, is just the copying of stats, but changing one attribute or ability score. Dose in a Black Earth, let's see here. Resistance, Acid, Dusk, Fortification, generic stuff. You know, the Temple's Monolith set. It's good that they added a set. Generic set. Rushing Wave, generic. Like, just generic all the time, all the way through. And yeah, this stuff, I don't know if the armor class is significantly better, but like I don't have much to say on that stuff. Let's just skip by all the armor. It's not super enthusiastic there. Alright, so here we are. Black Earth's Guardian Lenses. False Life, Insight, Quality Con, Physical Sheltering, Tank item. It's okay. It's okay. It's not bad. Like Eldritch Knight, Acid, Sork, Tank item. It's okay. Let's see here. Profane Life Force, Competence, Element Resistance, and Natural Armor. I would say a tank item, but actually that's not bad, because that one's more useful for a fighter than it is for a paladin, which is weird. I don't usually see those, so that's kind of interesting. As far as the Profane Life Force, I think that like Profane has just become a little too commonplace, but, you know, that's an opinion. Deadly Quality, yeah, so this is basically a Double Strike item, but Double Strike for eyes, that's extremely good. I love that. I think that Double Strike was one of the most difficult stats to slot. Double Strike 6 is a little powerful, though, to be fair. I think that might be a little powerful. I'm not sure. I'll have to look up Caneth Crafting later, but I know that the Cloak from Barovia, the, whatever it was, the Rage Cloak, that one is also Double Strike 6, and it's 2 levels above. So, really powerful, really good for any physical melee damager. I would probably use it, to be fair. Like, I'm not going to throw that one out, but I think that might be a little high scale. Let's see here. Acid Lore, Insightful Spell Sight, Wizardry, Spell Saves, standard Acid Sork, really. Standard Acid Eldritch Knight, kinda. So that one's, it's the same. Ice Lore, so insert basically everything here. Like, that's the weird thing is, these items don't have to be carbon copied with each other. They don't have to just be forgettable. I will not remember Eyes of the Eternal Flame from Eyes of the Howling Hatred. I'll just be like, the Lightning Lore Goggles. I won't even remember the name of them. And I think that's a real problem. I think that's probably one of the worst things that you can have is forgettable items. These all feel forgettable. Void Lore, Spellsight Potency, Insightful Evocation, and Insightful Conjuration. That's not as forgettable, to be fair, because the Insightfuls are not super common. So, not as bad. Evocation Conjuration is kind of like your Warlock thing a little bit early, because that's like, you know, level 10 is when you get access to Tentacles. So, it's like a Warlock thing, but a little bit early. Hurricane Insignia, Seeker, Speed, Quality. Combat Mastery is kind of cool. I kind of like that. The Speed for a Trinket, it makes things more available. It's a here and there. Like, there's enough speed items out there. Subtle Life, Fizzy Magic, Ghostly, Insightful, and Distant. Insightful Distant, and Insightful Diversion? Huh. Interesting. I don't mind that one. That's kind of cool. I think that it's good because, what was it? Necronomicon gives Ghostly as well, doesn't it? It's level 5, I believe. And that's, like, really powerful for Ghostly. So this one gives an option to a lot of other characters that have less options for Ghostly. And the Physium Magi is nice, so it's okay, it's okay. Subtle Pain, False Life, Insightful Deception, or Improved Deception. Diversion, Distant Diversion, Armor Piercing. Good. Just good all across. Nice. Let's see here. Storm Sniper's lenses. This is the double shot version of the same thing that we had before, but the double shot's 3 rather than 6%. So insert number here, basically. Acid Earth, Earthing Guard. I kind of like Earthing Guard. I just, kind of lame. And then the Flame of the Frost is going to be the same thing. Oh, it's got dodge. Oh, it changed things up a little bit. Dodge and magical instead. Weird. I didn't expect that. I was so ready to just think that it had the same stats. As far as the loot, like, a couple pieces are really standing out to me. Let's check out the legendaries just to see if there's anything different. Same. Pretty much the same. Yeah, they're coming across the same to me. So, like, a couple of pieces really stand out. I like the goggles. The goggles of double strike. That's really, 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 really cool. Does the level 31 armor still have dusk on it? Like, isn't that lesser displacement territory yet? I feel like that might need to get a little bit modified, a little bit updated, because that's pretty low, honestly. Other than that, like one of the reasons that I don't tend to review loot is because I'm not usually super enthralled with it. And I find that that probably doesn't make for great content. Hopefully it was more interesting. Hopefully I was able to at least keep you guys entertained during this section, but, like, that's the thing is I wasn't really super enthralled. I think that the goggles are amazing. And to be fair, the double shot ones are still kind of good because that's also not a thing you get all the time. But, like, yeah, like, this has lesser displacement, so why do those armors have dusk? I think that's a copy-paste. We need to fix that up. And the Physi and Magi, yeah, it's pretty much standard. So yeah. Yeah, like, there's nothing... the legendary ones are not exciting to me at all because those options exist, so I don't care. Like, it's the heroic ones that are interesting. The legendary ones are lame. So anyway, that's the whole thing. That's the new loot. The only other thing that you want to cover for the update 26, which will be update 56's loot, the only thing you want to cover for Temple of Elemental Evil's loot system is that the craftable weapons are no longer going to be available. So saith the loot guy right here. So we have all of your existing items stay the way they are. All right, so ingredients and weapon armor bases for the crafting system will no longer drop. But if you have any left, you can create them at will. So if you really want these items, go on the auctionist and buy them out, or run that dungeon over and over and over until you get the ones you want. That's basically the only way you're going to be able to keep them. The existing non-crafted named items are obtainable still in the temple, so those are just like the ones that you could normally get, like, oh, what was it? Like, I don't know, Serpent Sting or whatever it is. I think it's Serpent Sting. I ran through chests to try and get that 53 times, so I'm thinking I should probably know that weapon, but I seem to be drawing... I'm not quite sure. I'm not drawing a blank, but I think it might be Serpent Sting. Point being, like, those items will still exist, the ML7 and 26, but you'll also have access to these newer items, which I'm assuming will be in the, like, the end chests or whatever. So that one I'm not quite clear on. Basically, it's going to be that. We aren't previewing the augments quite. Yeah, okay, yeah. So yeah, basically we're going to keep the old loot, and we're going to get new loot added in, and it's going to be revamped. And one of the coolest things about the way that they're changing this, and this, I'm glad I can end on a positive note here. One of the coolest things that they're doing to change up Lamannia, or not Lamannia, to change up Temple of Elemental Evil, is that they are allowing people to go into it, like, in sections. So there's little breakdowns of the dungeon. The dungeon's going to be broken up a lot more, and it's going to be like, I don't know, 4 or 5 actual dungeons within the temple. So it's going to be a lot less grindy, and you can actually play through them and enjoy individual parts of the dungeon. For anybody who's ever played World of Warcraft, they did the same thing with Stratholme, and I believe Scholomance? I believe they did that with Scholomance as well. They definitely did it with Scarlet Monastery as well, where they broke up the dungeon into individual parts, little sections of it, so that it wasn't like, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours to run the whole thing. So they're going to be doing the same thing with Temple of Elemental Evil in DDO, and I think that's kind of a really interesting change that they've made, because I don't think I've ever seen DDO do that, at least not in my time being with it. So I'm really curious to see that. That is, as far as I could tell, not previewable. The Lamannia test server is going down tomorrow afternoon, so I wanted to get this video out. So I really haven't gone in there to check it out, but it looks like that's not quite previewable. So next time I go on Lamannia, I'll probably just go through some quick changes if anything has happened with these archetypes, but as far as I've seen so far, like, I'm not as satisfied as I was before. I'm still really antsy to try a Dark Apostate, but I don't really think that it's going to play out the same way that it was, that I planned to have it play out, or that I thought it would, in the first preview. So, all in all, I'm not as satisfied with any of these options, but I'm hopeful. I am hopeful. So next time, I'm probably going to go over some quick notes, some quick little snippets on what the changes are, and then we'll try to head into Temple of Elemental Evil, if it's available, and see what the changes there are. The loot, it's not as big a deal. I'll probably head into like the level 32 stuff. I'll just bump right up to level 32 instead of playing level 20s, because once again, the only reason I did this was to test out the archetype, not epic destinies. I don't want that stuff getting in the way. So, that being said, I think that's pretty much all I've got for you today. I did not expect this would take me an hour. I was actually kind of surprised at how long it took. Wow. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you enjoy all this content. I hope you check out the previous video on Update Preview 1, Update 56 Preview 1, and just get yourselves like more of an understanding of what I've been doing on Lamannia these past couple of previews. That being said, if you want to check out my YouTube stuff, once again, link is in the chat right there. You can go ahead and check it out, or you could just go onto YouTube, ScrubLeet Academy, and, you know, check out what the Rabbit has been doing over there, because I've got a ton more DDO-related stuff over there that has never shown up here. So, just jump over there, see what I've got. You know, if you enjoy it, you know, please subscribe, throw a comment. I always love to talk to people about this kind of stuff. And if you don't, well, your view still helps the YouTube algorithm, so I'm still fine with that. But I think for now, I've got to get out of here. It's quite late over here, and I need to wake up early in the morning. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.